this session. Thank you, Julian and Patrick, for helping us to prepare for this summit. We surely couldn't have done it without you. This session, how universities address the needs of the food industry, a project-based learning approach for students in Uganda, is based on work from a Makerere University project titled Developing Innovative Technology for Medium, Small, Micro Enterprises in the Food Processing Industry. It was funded by USAID, Higher Education for Cultural Development, with support from Michigan State University. The project team members include myself as the project PI and other members, Mr. Moses Kalyango, Mr. Emmanuel Baide, Mr. Isaac Oluk, and our coach, Miss Dr. Amy Jamieson. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, so those are the current team members. We are very excited to be able to share our work with you on this USAID Global Summit. And just before we start, before I share more details, we'd like to know more about you. We'll kindly ask that you take a few minutes to just answer the questions that are coming up on the poll, and then we can go ahead. We can see we mostly have people in higher education and research, and some in NGOs, some in government. Interesting. I think we're going to have really good discussions. We do have another question for you. Would love for you to answer as well. Kindly put your answer in the poll so we can just understand how much of HCD that you know. Yeah, interesting. Oh, okay. Very interesting. We can see that majority of our audience know at least something about HCD. Oh, wonderful. Okay, thank you. Thank you all for checking in with the poll. I'm now going to invite Emmanuel to just give us some, information as before we start our discussion. Emmanuel, you're welcome.
Emmanuel, you are muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much, Dr. Julia Chigozi, for the good leadership. We are a small team, but a very hardworking one. My name is Emmanuel Baide, and I work as the research and development lead at Badai Technologies. It's a Ugandan-based research firm. We focus on areas of innovation in water, sanitation, and health, as well as food systems. I also dabble as a project team member. On developing innovative technologies for small, medium, and macro enterprises in the food processing industry. It's a project based at Makerere University, and our emphasis is on developing user-friendly equipment. Just briefly about Badai Technologies, Badai develops innovative and sustainable ideas that can improve the quality of life for the common person. That's why we try to bring this thing called human-centered design. So my session will focus on creating solutions to issues facing agro-processors in the developing world. Next slide, please. Now let's try to focus into our session, the topic of our session. The session is called Creating Solutions to Issues Facing the Agro-Processors in the Developing World. Now here I find three key important issues or words. One is agro-processor. In this way, it is actually the user. Two, the developing world. Three are the issues or the challenges. However, in looking at this subject, we have a critical point, because whereas you are solving a challenge, there is a person owning the challenge, and that is the user. And that challenge, for that user, for the user to have their challenges solved, the environment around them must be supportive. So when you look at this schematic, it indicates that at the center of everything, there is a user, and then that user has a challenge. But that challenge could be attributed to the environment around them. Therefore, in any way, if you're planning to develop a solution, the three must be looked at in tandem. There is nothing that will work in isolation here. Therefore, as you develop the solution, the idea must be one that brings the three into perspective. Slide, please. I want us to look at just a simple example of yogurt production. Part of the unit operations in yogurt production is pasteurization. Let's take a look at two case scenarios. One is a small scale producer and another is a large scale producer. Each of these has got different requirements. For a small scale processor, normally their production capacities are very small, maybe 100 to 200 liters of milk used. Then they always have limited capital. They always prefer low-tech machines, and etc. There are so many characteristics that define this small-scale processor. Then we have the other side of a large-scale processor, who on their end is interested in large volumes of production. They have their money, they have capital to invest. They prefer using automated systems because they make work much simpler, and very many other points. Now, what comes into your mind at this point? Whereas each of them has got a challenge of pasteurization, there is no solution that fits both of them. Each of them will have a tailor-made solution. Next slide, please. Part of our research as Badai Technologies is focused in food systems. And looking at the challenges we have in Uganda, there is this community where people do cleaning of maize using winnowing trays or using a hand picking, like you can see that picture of school children seated trying to pick stones from the maize. And then you have a picture here showing ladies trying to do winnowing of maize using winnowing trays. And then the other picture showing those that are using a sieve, but still they're almost using their hands to clean. So as Badai Technologies, we came up with a cleaning system that is relatively improved compared to the existing methods. And that is what we call the pedal operated maize cleaner. Here locally, we call it the Sunsula cleaner. It's one of the words we use. So this solution very common form of transport here in sub-Saharan Africa, and therefore utilization of such technologies in agro-processing equipment could improve adoption of different technologies. So this technology improves production as it works off-grid. It has limited operational costs. It is not discriminatory, like you can see in a picture. A kid at a school is busy using it to do a bit of cleaning. Yeah, it is not gender sensitive, and yet it produces maize, which is very clean. Its cleaning efficiency is about 95%, with a higher throughput of 500 kgs per hour. Comparing this, if you have to process, if you clean, for example, 500 kgs per hour, it may take you quite a time if you're using these other methods that were previously used. Next slide, please. Now, not every good thing seems good to each and everyone. So whereas the pedal operated system is giving us good production qualities, there is a section of people that are always criticizing it because it is just a shift from very rudimentary to unimproved. But comparing the community for which we designed it, it is actually a much better technology, and they appreciate it. So those who are looking at Uganda in the perspective of the entire world, which is running at high tech, always criticize it and propose that we should be making high tech equipment for agro-processing. But we all know that high tech is highly reliant on electricity. That standing energy is just an isolated case. There are other factors. For you to have high-tech machines, you have to be they come with a high cost of investment. They require trained personnel. Actually, some equipment come from Europe, China, and the moment it lands into the country, it is not attended to. Actually, no one is there to use it because of the sophisticated technology that surrounds it. So looking at a case of high tech, we need supporting technologies, supporting policies, sorry. If we have policies in place, for example, that allow use of high-tech equipment, then chances are that their creation and adoption will be very high. Looking at Uganda as a case, Uganda at the moment, I think possesses the highest number of hydropower stations within East Africa. But that does not translate into power usage, as only 28% of the country has access. 28% of the households within the country has access to this electricity. And even those that have access actually complain of the high tariffs that come with it. Meaning, whereas we have it in larger quantities in terms of production, it is not reliable. Not every one of us can access it, which kind of limits the adoption of high-tech equipment. So this alone gives you a snapshot that if you're creating a technology, it must be one that fits within the community that you intend to use that equipment. Next slide, please. So what do we learn from this? It is not enough to develop a technology, but that technology must solve the challenge. And that technology must be user-friendly and affordable. When you look at user-friendliness and affordability, it comes down to the environment, the enabling environment. For example, here we are looking at the developing world. It must be a technology that can be easily afforded. by those people in the developing world. So just to summarize, I'll go back to our session theme, creating solutions to issues facing the agro-processing industry in the developing world. So the three words: challenge, user, and look at their user, the user and the environment around them, and then based on that, to create a tailor-made solution. That is the only way we can have solutions that fit the best interests of our users. Thank you so much. Over to you, producer.
Hello, thank you everyone for attending today. I'm going to take over from here. Emmanuel, thank you for that wonderful presentation and example that you're trying to give us. So I am Isaac Olok. I'm research and teaching assistant at the University of Kentucky, but also I double as a co-founder at Bade Technologies. When you look at the previous presentation from Emma, where we have the at the end of the game, we have the end user. What comes into our mind is, how do we solve maybe problems at higher institutions of learning so that we can impact the end user? Because we realize that if we are going to develop technologies that can actually fit the users we develop for, then we need to start with the people who have the capacity to develop that, the people that we train to be the next innovators, the next developers of such technologies. And these are usually people we find at, for example, maybe higher institutions of learning or technical institutions. And of this, you have students, you have researchers doing all that. So I will start off by maybe asking a question to everyone that is here. You can freely type in the chat. I realized we have a diverse group of people who have joined us today here, some from NGOs, government, and others from research. I'm taking an assumption we have some also from higher institutions of learning. So in whichever capacity, how do your organization involve, for example, students to solve some of the stakeholder problems? For example, if you're in a government unit, how does your unit involve different people within maybe the developers in your unit to solve problems in your community? So we shall take like a minute or two to get feedback from all of you. Then I'll go ahead to share some of the insights that have been that we involved in this project. So you can freely type in the chat. No, every answer is correct. All right, Samantha is saying we encourage, you said, staff to apply positive youth development approach in HE activity design, engaging youth throughout the design process. Thank you, Samantha, for that. Any other input from others? Yeah, then we have Lorena say talking about consultation as part of government office. Thank you, Lorena. So any other? We still have like more 30 seconds so that we can have a wider discussion around this. And then we connect this with what we have. Yes, so we have still Samantha giving us a link about more how we can encourage, I think, more positive youth development. Then we have another submission where students are included in surveys, focus groups to identify problems, common vision, and solutions. So thank you all for that feedback. I shall continue. When you look at all this feedback, these are actually good approaches where we are looking at engaging stakeholders and maybe the private sector innovation hubs. But sometimes in reality, when we go to the base of the pyramid, or maybe at the level of higher institutions of learning, some of these are not practiced. We don't have, maybe, for example, students engaging different stakeholders to understand actually how their problems, or to understand how they are solving, how they are supposed to solve their solutions, solve their problems. We don't have maybe government officials engaging different stakeholders in some of these positions. So then also Jack Elliott is saying, I think this is a question, what are 2 or 3 best lessons will provide that involve youth? So we are going to discuss all that in my, based on what we are doing actually. So producer, maybe, or you can click to the next. Okay, thank you for that. So all these submissions show us that there is a very big importance of us engaging stakeholders to solve the problems of the end user. And like I highlighted, this is something that has been lacking in higher institutions of learning, mostly in the developing world. So some of the approaches that we involve in this project is involving right away the design students into this process of human-centered design. For example, if you are going to develop solutions for agro-processors, we specifically involve students of agro-processing engineering course into this HCD process. First of all, they empathize with the different agro-processors to understand actually the problem that they're facing. Unlike previously, where most of the projects or the solutions that the students used to work on were basically based on secondary data, where you do some literature review and maybe develop a solution, develop a technology, but when it comes to time of deployment, the solution actually doesn't meet the needs of the end user. So in this project, we introduce a project-based learning approach and HCD to the students, so that we can try to bridge that gap. Dr. Julia, I know, will speak a lot about the process on how HCD in the next slides. But the most important highlight I want to bring here is that by doing this, we are being able to bridge that gap between what actually students theoretically learn and then what is in the field practice during what is in the field practice when it comes to developing agro-processing technology. And most importantly, we involve also industrial practitioners. For example, the fabricators. We had an engagement, like for example, Badai Technologies would have an engagement with these students, take them through the design process, but also these students would also first learn from the agro-processors to understand actually the solution they're supposed to develop for them. So with this, they end up getting a lot of knowledge compared to actually a common practice of maybe sending them out for internship placements, where they mainly engage with industry without necessarily maybe sometimes understanding the exact problem of the end user. So the end result of this is that students acquire the analytical and then the practical knowledge skills. They start seeing things differently. That at the end of the day, the end user is the boss, is the person you're developing the solution for. And with this mentality, such students are actually ready to go into the field, to go into the industry and apply their engineering knowledge when it comes to development. So Jack, when you ask about the 2 or 3 best lessons you provide that involve youth, so one, I think, is integrating them through this HCD process in terms of developing solutions. For example, if we are stealing them and we want to teach them knowledge, we don't just have to teach them how to maybe fabricate. We need to teach them that what you're fabricating is supposed to benefit the end user. So that has been one of the things that we have employed and we have used. So I will call Dr. Julia to take over from here. I know some of the answers to this question will be answered in the forthcoming slides. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Isaac and Emmanuel. Thank you very much. What we have had this far is trying to just create a base for us to get into our discussions. We've had Emmanuel discuss the situations that we find with our end user, who is the agro-processor. And what he emphasized there was to show us that this agro-processor comes with a big mix. Their nature is different, their energy is different, their products are different. So they have the energy they can afford is different, the funding they have is different. So our agro-processor comes in a sort of complex form. On the other hand, Isaac has introduced us to higher learning institutions and their importance in solving these problems or challenges, for example, for industry, in particular, agro-processing industry now. And we will usually have different institutions do it differently. And the result of that is that the students from all these different institutions come out with different skills. So we are thinking to ourselves, okay, we have a problem that we want to solve. Next slide, please. We have a problem that we would like to solve. Our challenge was to develop a pasteurizer and a fruit pulper for the MSMEs in the agro-processing industry. And as Makerere University Department of Agriculture and Biosystems Engineering, we were implementing this. On the other hand, we have, within Makerere, we have students who we feel like their practical skills are lacking. So we are the implementers. We want to improve the skills that we impart to our students. So this looks like a good vehicle that we could use because we want to solve a problem in the agro-processing industry. On the other hand, we have the end user who are the agro-processors, and they need solutions that can fit each one of them. One shoe size doesn't fit all, so we have to be thinking, how do we meet their varied needs? Okay, so in this project, we then used 2 vehicles that we embedded together. One, a project-based students learning approach, where we were going to involve the students. And again, human-centered design that really focuses on user-based solutions. Next slide, please. Project-based learning, I know most of you are aware of that, but it's just a teaching method in which students gain knowledge and skills by working for an extended period of time to investigate and respond to an authentic, engaging, and complex question, problem, or challenge. So you have the students thinking with you or thinking with us as the project team about which solutions are going to meet these different agro-processors, bearing in mind They have different needs. So how can we approach them with those different needs? And because they're different, it's a complex problem. It's a challenge to them. As they engage, they have to come up with solutions that fit these different processors. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And then on the other hand, we want to use the human-centered design in which really we are incorporating the user's perspective in the design process. And it has 5 stages where we start by empathizing with the processor. There we get to understand our user's experience through observation, interaction, and immersion in what they do. And after we have collected this data, we go on and we're able to define particularly what is the challenge of this processor. So we narrow down to what we think is the challenge, which we reframe as the problem statement. We then move on to another stage where we ideate and think, okay, what are the different solutions? And then from that, we can prototype and transform this idea into something that they can use or something that we can take to them to solve their situation. And finally, we test. But as we saw from the poll, many of you have already had an idea about HCD, and we want to just, welcome you into our journey and show you how we applied this particularly in our project. Next slide, please. Okay, with our challenge in mind, before we can show you what we did, we just want to invite you to drop it into the chat. Given the challenge that we have, in what ways or what sort of ideas, in what way do you think we could apply HCD or PBL to solve this challenge? At what point, for example, do you think we could get the user to tell us what they think or involve the user? Or how do you think we could use this to be able to create, a project-based learning for our students? Can you drop anything in the chat? We just have just a minute to do that. Okay, in what ways do you think we could have used HCD or PBL in addressing this challenge? Any ideas, any suggestions? You can drop your answers in the chat. Wonderful, thank you, Fainula. Engage them starting at conception and in the design and throughout the process. Very good, thank you for that. Okay, in the interest of time, we'll keep watching the chat. I just want to invite Moses to just give us the story or give you the journey of how we went about it, and then we'll get back to you.
Thank you so much for presenters, our guests tonight. You're very welcome. My name is Moses Kalyango. I'm a Ugandan researcher and a master's student at Makerere University. In my discussion this morning and this evening, I'm going to share with you our project experience while using human-centered design approach to improve project research and addressing research challenges as higher institutions of learning. As the earlier presenters have shared with you, we've worked on this project for 1.5 years now. Our research team and a team of students have been working on this project, SISP, in order to develop user-based solutions to the challenges that are faced by the agro-processors or the end users not only the end users, but putting in mind that at the end of the day, the other objective was to equip our students with improved versions of research methods that we currently use, and that is the human-centered and the project learning approaches in order to carry out research that can really solve problems of the end users. Tonight, I'm going to share with you an empathy process that we took and defining a problem, and that is at brainstorming. At the ideation phase, what we did after collecting data from the end users, and then what activities we've done during the prototyping phase. And then I'll tell you also a story of what we found out at testing phase of this equipment. Next slide, please. Yes, while we're starting this process or using this approach, at the empathy stage, we had a team of students and another stakeholders or other stakeholders. Those are agro-processors and the fabrication companies, Badai Technologies and the Newgen Agro-Processing and Newgen Engineering Group. So during the empathy stage, here we were focusing on understanding the perspective of our end users and understanding the real problems they go through. Because sometimes the outlook of a problem would not be the root cause of such a problem. So in this stage, we did what we call the on-site visits and the off-site visits. On-site visits, these were visits that our processors or the end users and fabrication companies paid visits to Makerere, where we had these equipments that were earlier designed by our department in Makerere. And then at the offsite, these were visits that this research team and the group of students paid to the agro-processors facility in order to understand and identify the real problems that these processors go through during their process of doing their product development and doing their processing on a daily basis. And during this empathy stage, we, on those pre-visits, the agro-processors were able to understand what this project was all about, and then signed some product non-disclosure agreements, because we're going to work closely to them and watch their processes as they do them right from material preparation to product packaging. So we wanted them to be sure that we are not after their product, but it was a project that was going to help them improve their processes and help our students. And here in this empathy stage, we collected a lot of information through interviews and observations. We ascertained what their production capacities were. We also understood the kind of equipment they were using within their facilities. We also ascertained information on the affordability, on which size of equipment they could afford according to the production capacities they do. And after that, next slide, please. We are also able to, like I earlier mentioned, we were able to identify which equipments they use. And in this caption, we see a pasteurizer that is powered by biomass, and specifically it uses charcoal. It has a stove that is pushed under beneath this pasteurizer to help them provide energy. And also on the other side, we see a fruit pulper that is idle powered, and it's what they use to process during pulping. And the next slide, please. Yes, so still at empathy, when we did the off-site visits and the on-site visits, we carried out the real process, how it is done from material preparation to product packaging, just to be sure which processes they go through and which equipments they use, like I explained. But surprisingly, this will shock you in the next pictures guests are going to see. When we talk about small scale, it might sound different to, or it might be perceived differently according to who hears it. Like when you talk in a perspective of someone coming from the United States or the developed countries, a small scale would be probably maybe that processor can do about 5,000 liters in a day. Here in Uganda, when we talk about a small scale or a medium scale, these are processors who can only afford like 100 liters in a day. And really their processes and what they do is really kindly different, as you're going to see in the next pictures of these production processes. In the next slide, please. Yes, so in this picture, we try to capture like the operations that different processors use during pulping. What I really want people to look at is the picture on your top right, where you see workers in a company trying to clean pineapples for processing. But one, they are putting their pineapples on the ground, bare ground. They're washing from a ground, and there is no consistency in doing it, because today they are doing it from the veranda. The next day they can do it from another side of the veranda. And then after cleaning that, they take these pineapples inside for preparation and size reduction, which is really a difficult thing or a difficult task to be sure of, whether quality at the end of the day of our product is going to be safe for food, for consumption, and even the process, how tedious it is. It's really a difficult one. So we captured this by empathizing with them and their processes that they do on a daily basis. Next slide, please. And yes, this is another picture capturing pulping operations. This is someone who does passion fruit juice, but he is using a 1.2 liter blender to do this operation. Imagine what could be the capacity of this person per day if they are going to rely on a 1.2 liter blender to do this pulping operation. Can they really do 1,000 liters in a day on a small scale? It is really difficult to achieve. So we're trying to understand their problems and how we could categorize them or group them in order to find which category of people need what, in order to develop what we later on called the user-based solution. Next slide, please. Yes, when it came to the pasteurization operation, I want to tell you that this is the most common practice of what we found out from the about 16 companies that we worked with. And this is what they do on a daily basis. Someone is pasteurizing milk on a 3-stone fire, is using firewood. And another one is pasteurizing pineapple juice on what they could maybe refer to as an improved saving stove, but not really. But this is the process they go through on a daily basis, and this is how they produce their product to put on market for people to consume. So because these processors sometimes lack information and knowledge, they may not be sure of the implication and the healthy impact that they get as the people working on this process on a daily basis. What you see in the middle picture, you see some dark on a wall. That is smoke that turned that wall black. So these people may not be aware that as much as that smoke goes to the wall, the other smoke goes to their products. And that causes contamination. And working in such an environment, we cannot guarantee the safety of the product. It's a must that cross-contamination will happen. And the microbial quality of the products at the end of the day will be really low and very inconsistent. Next slide, please. Yes, so this is a picture on empathy or the process that we carried out on site. On site, like I defined earlier, this was the visit that was done by those agro-processors to Makerere. We have a small testing lab where these equipments are, that students always go and attend some classes of design. So in this facility, we have a pasteurizer and some small unit, like it's a processing facility in a way. It has like the decontamination sink, it has a preparation table, it has these equipments in that order. So these processors were also invited here, they worked in here, and we kept asking them questions and observing how they felt this process compared to what they do in their places, in their facilities. And they were very impressed. They were really giving positive impression, and they were seeing, some of them were seeing equipment that they had not seen before. So it gave a very good impression to them and to us and as a project, in order to get and gather information of what they knew about these processes and then their capacities. So yeah, so at that stage, we were able to complete our data collection in the empathy stage. And then next slide, please. We continue to defining our problem, and that is in the brainstorming session. So in the brainstorming, our design team could meet on a weekly basis online in order to develop and craft insights based on these user experiences. And the students gave in feedback of what they found out from the field and what the processors felt. And the kind of advice they later gave us after using the equipments that they found at Makerere, that's the pasteurizer and the pulper. And we found out that these processors valued about 5 or 6 elements. And these, we categorize them to form what we called our design considerations. We found out that these processors value their operation safety. And in here, they want to work with an equipment that is safe for use. They also find ease of use of these equipments very key. I'll give an example. The pasteurizer you saw in the earlier picture, when these processors came and they worked with it, most of them gave us a feedback on the height. They were like, this pulper is so high, we cannot use it like on a daily basis, meaning it is not ergonomically safe for people to use, like say someone of an average height. It is very high, and that was a recommendation that researchers can never think about. Oh, we didn't think about that before we invited the processors to use these equipments to really see and give us comments. The other was efficiency, versatility, operation time, and cost of purchase. during our meetings, we in our data collection, we could ask them questions to do with how much would you offer? Say for you this pasteurizer of 100 liters, and then they could give us some feedback on that also. Next slide, please. Yes, so after we gathered our ideas and grouped them during the brainstorming session, we went ahead to the ideation stage. And in the ideation stage, we were trying to explore on those different aspects that these processors are devised could best suit their needs. We tried to discuss as a team what could be the ideas that we could do to solve those challenges. And then this introduced us to generating questions that are called how might we questions. For those who have used sprint-based before, sprint-based has these different tools that we use and templates. So the how might we question during this stage of ideation could help us develop as many ideas as possible as a team. Then later on, we could select out on a few that we think can best suit or best answer the questions of the end user. Next slide, please. Yes, after developing several ideas of what could be done to solve those different areas of challenges, we went ahead to start on the prototyping phase of these equipment. And here we're trying to generate solutions that could address those challenges, like we stated. And this way, later on, categorized under user manuals, trainings, construction, sales and service, and maintenance. So these ones were like an umbrella of what those different solutions could be composed into, just breaking down the different solutions into like those challenges that you could really be addressed by a user manual. For example, someone may not know, like when water gets done in the water jacket, what could we do? Yeah, so in that way, we were able to go through the prototyping phase. And then next slide, please. In the prototyping phase, like I said, we were able to improve these equipments, incorporating in ideas that our processors or the end users gave us. And we designed these different ideas into these. We incorporated them into these equipment, the pulper and the pasteurizer. So that one is a fruit pulper that we had improved. And next slide. And that one is a pasteurizer that was improved and came up with. Next slide. So at the moment, we have done a pre-test of those equipments, and we collected feedback on what the processors felt we had done or we had improved on these equipments. And in their feedback, they were satisfied with those improvements. And in our next phase, next slide, please. In our next phase, we are fabricating another version of a fruit pulper and the pasteurizer, which we shall do a general testing with our end users. And that's the experience I had to share with you. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Moses. We have come to the end of this session, but some of the key takeaways that we had as you have been inquiring was that the students really enjoyed participating in in this project, they were able to learn so many lessons, realizing that the agro-processors come in so many different forms, and they have to make sure that they are thinking of all sorts of solutions for them. The other thing that the students learned is that their expertise or their skill comes when they engage. When you engage, you think, and you're able to come up with different solutions. So even as we go on, the students are going to be involved in testing these prototypes. And again, they are going to be able to learn more. So thank you so much. Thank you for being part of this session. And thank you for sharing our journey.